June 19th, 2022, New Haven, Connecticut. A Sunday evening that would change everything. Randy Cox was sitting in the back of a police transport van, his hands cuffed behind him. The metal walls surrounded him. No windows to see where they were going. No seatbelt to keep him secure. Just cold steel and the hum of the engine as the van moved through the city streets. He'd been arrested less than an hour ago. Gun charges, they said. Randy knew he'd be processed. Maybe spend a night in holding, then figure things out with a lawyer. That's what he thought would happen. A routine arrest. Nothing more. But routine has a way of becoming catastrophic in seconds. Officer Oscar Diaz was behind the wheel, navigating through the streets of New Haven. The speed limit was 25 miles per hour. Diaz was doing 36. In the back, Randy shifted uncomfortably, the handcuffs digging into his wrists. He couldn't brace himself if anything happened. He was completely vulnerable. Then, near the intersection of Prospect and Grove Streets, something caught Diaz's attention. Another vehicle. A near collision. Diaz's foot slammed on the brake pedal. The van stopped. Randy didn't. His body launched forward with the full force of momentum, head first into the solid metal wall. The impact was instant. Devastating. The sound echoed through the van like a thunderclap. Randy collapsed onto the floor. His body crumpled in an unnatural position. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Randy's voice, weak and trembling, broke through. I can't move. Officer Diaz heard it. The body camera captured it. Randy Cox lying on the floor of the van, unable to move, telling the officer he needed help. Diaz stopped the van. He opened the back door and looked inside. Randy was still on the floor, his legs motionless. I can't move, Randy repeated. His voice was desperate now. Please, I can't move. Diaz acknowledged it. He radioed for an ambulance. Help was on the way. That's what protocol demanded. When someone says they can't move after an impact like that, you wait. You don't move them. You let the paramedics handle it. You treat it like the medical emergency it is. But Diaz didn't wait. Instead, he closed the door and got back behind the wheel. The van started moving again, carrying Randy Cox toward the police station. His body still collapsed on the floor, his spine fractured in ways no one yet understood. Every bump in the road, every turn sent waves of agony through his broken neck. He was paralyzed from the chest down, and the officers transporting him had no idea, or maybe they just didn't believe him. When the van finally arrived at the station, Randy was still on the floor. Officers opened the back door and saw him lying there, unmoving. His legs were limp. His face was twisted in pain. Get up, one officer said. Randy didn't move. Come on, man, get up. Still nothing. Because Randy Cox couldn't get up. He couldn't feel his legs. He couldn't move anything below his chest. But the officers didn't see a man with a catastrophic spinal injury. They saw a man they thought was faking it. Move your legs, another officer commanded. Randy's legs didn't move. You're not even trying. The frustration in their voices grew. One officer suggested Randy was just drunk, that maybe he'd had too much to drink before the arrest, and was now being difficult. They laughed about it, mocked him, told him to stop playing games, and then they dragged him. With Randy unable to support his own weight, officers grabbed him and pulled him out of the van. His body was limp, his head lolling to the side. They dragged him across the floor of the station, through the hallways, and into a holding cell. His paralyzed body scraped against the ground, his dignity stripped away with every second. All the while, Randy kept telling them, kept pleading, I can't move, something's wrong, please, I need help. But nobody listened. Not until 15 minutes had passed. 15 minutes of Randy lying in that cell, his body broken, his breathing shallow, his life hanging by a thread. Finally, paramedics arrived. They took one look at him and knew immediately this was serious. This wasn't a drunk man faking an injury. This was a medical emergency. They rushed him to Yale New Haven Hospital. The doctors ran tests, took scans, and confirmed what Randy already knew in his body but couldn't prove to the officers. His neck was broken. His spine was shattered. He was paralyzed from the chest down, and it was permanent. Randy Cox would never walk again, never feel his legs again, never live without a ventilator helping him breathe. The impact in that van had stolen his future in a single moment, and the officers who were supposed to protect him had treated him like a criminal, faking an injury for attention. At 36 years old, Randy's life had been irrevocably changed. His immune system was compromised. His respiratory system required constant medical support. His life expectancy had been drastically reduced. And all of it, every single bit of suffering, was preventable. The gun charges that led to his arrest? Those were dropped. Randy Cox was never convicted of the crime he was arrested for that day, but the punishment he received was worse than any prison sentence. It was a life sentence of paralysis, pain, and lost possibilities. His family watched him struggle to survive, knowing that the people who swore to serve and protect had failed him at every turn. They knew something had to be done. Justice had to be pursued. Accountability had to be demanded. So in 2022, Randy Cox filed a lawsuit, not just against Officer Oscar Diaz, but against the city of New Haven and 5 officers involved in his transport and treatment. The lawsuit sought $100 million, citing negligence, recklessness, excessive use of force, and failure to provide medical assistance. The city tried to defend itself, tried to explain away the decisions made that night. But the body camera footage told a story that couldn't be disputed. The evidence was clear. Randy Cox had been catastrophically injured in police custody, and instead of receiving immediate medical care, he was mocked, dragged, and left to suffer. The case became national news. Protesters flooded the streets of New Haven, hundreds of people demanding justice. They carried signs. They chanted Randy's name. They refused to let his story be forgotten or swept under the rug like so many others before him. And then in a stunning development, the city settled. $45 million, the largest police misconduct payout in United States history. The money would cover Randy's lifelong medical care, estimated to cost between $16 and $22 million. It was a record-breaking settlement, a public admission that what happened to Randy Cox was indefensible. But money couldn't give Randy his life back. It couldn't restore his mobility, his independence, his future. It was compensation, not justice. Real justice would require more. In late 2025, 3 years after that terrible night, criminal charges finally came. Not for everyone involved, but for some. Former Sergeant Betsy Sagi and Officer Ronald Presley pleaded guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. Their punishment? 60-day sentences, suspended, meaning they wouldn't spend a single day in jail. For the family, for the protesters, for everyone who'd fought for accountability, it felt like a slap in the face. Randy Cox was paralyzed for life, and the officers who'd failed him walked free, but the legal battle wasn't over. 3 officers, Oscar Diaz, Jocelyn Lavandiere, and Luis Rivera, still faced trial for cruelty to persons and reckless endangerment. Their cases moved slowly through the system, delayed by motions and legal maneuvering. By December 2025, the 3 agreed to a consolidated trial, meaning they'd face justice together. 4 officers had been fired, Lavandiere and Rivera, in 2023, along with others involved. But Oscar Diaz? In January 2025, despite still facing criminal charges, he was restored to his position with the New Haven Police Department. The man who'd been driving the van, who'd slammed on the brakes, who'd continued driving instead of waiting for the ambulance, was back on duty. The decision sparked outrage. How could an officer facing criminal charges for his role in paralyzing a man be allowed back on the streets? What message did that send to the community? To other officers? To victims of police misconduct everywhere? Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who'd represented Randy and his family, spoke publicly about the case. He called it a pivotal moment in the fight for police accountability, a test of whether the system would truly hold officers responsible or continue to protect them even when the evidence was damning. Randy Cox's story isn't unique, and that's the tragedy. It's not the first time someone has been injured in police custody and had their pleas for help ignored. It's not the first time officers have treated a person's suffering as performance, as inconvenience, as something to be mocked rather than addressed. What happened to Randy is part of a pattern, a system that too often values protocol over people, power over compassion, authority over humanity. When Randy said he couldn't move, he was telling the truth. But the officers didn't believe him because they'd already decided what kind of person he was. They'd already made assumptions based on his arrest, his race, his circumstances, and those assumptions nearly killed him. The body camera footage shows everything. It shows Randy's injury. It shows the officer's response. It shows the gap between what should have happened and what actually did. That footage became the most powerful evidence in the case because it couldn't be disputed, couldn't be explained away, couldn't be reframed into something more palatable. People watched that footage and saw themselves, saw their brothers, their sons, their fathers, saw how quickly a routine arrest can become a life-altering catastrophe, saw how the people trusted with our safety can sometimes be the greatest threat to it. The protests in New Haven weren't just about Randy Cox. They were about every person who's been failed by a system that's supposed to protect them. Every person whose cries for help have been ignored. Every family that's had to fight for basic acknowledgement that their loved one's suffering mattered. Today, Randy Cox remains paralyzed. He requires around-the-clock medical care. His life looks nothing like what he imagined it would be when he woke up on June 19, 2022. Every breath requires assistance. Every day is a reminder of what was taken from him in that van. The settlement money provides for his care, but it doesn't give him back his mobility. The criminal charges against the officers move forward, but they don't undo the damage. The firings send a message, but they don't prevent the next tragedy. What Randy's case does provide is a record, a documented instance of how catastrophically wrong things can go, and how essential accountability is in preventing it from happening again. It provides a roadmap for other victims, other families, other communities fighting for justice. It proves that even when the system fails, even when officers choose convenience over care, even when institutions protect their own, the truth can still emerge. The evidence can still speak. Justice, however delayed and imperfect, can still be pursued. Randy Cox's story is one of suffering, yes, but it's also one of resilience, of a family that refused to accept injustice, of a community that refused to stay silent, of attorneys who fought for accountability even when the odds seemed impossible. The trial for the remaining 3 officers approaches. The outcome remains uncertain, but what's certain is that Randy Cox's name will not be forgotten. His story will continue to be told, and the fight for a system that truly protects everyone, not just some, will continue long after the verdicts are read, because Randy Cox deserved better. He deserved officers who believed him when he said he couldn't move. He deserved immediate medical care. He deserved to be treated with dignity and humanity at his most vulnerable moment. He deserved what every person deserves when they say they need help, to be believed, to be cared for, to be protected. That's not what he got. But his story ensures that the next person, and the one after that, might have a better chance, might be believed, might receive the care that could save their life. That's what justice requires. Not just punishment for those who fail, but prevention of the next failure. Not just compensation for harm done, but transformation of the systems that allowed the harm in the first place. Randy Cox's journey isn't over, neither is the fight his story represents, and until that system changes, until every person in custody is treated with the care and dignity they deserve, stories like Randy's will continue to emerge from the shadows, demanding to be heard, refusing to be silenced, insisting that we can do better, because we must do better. Randy Cox's life depends on it, and so does the life of the next person placed in the back of a van, handcuffed and vulnerable, trusting that the people in uniform will keep them safe. That trust was broken on June 19, 2022. The question now is whether we'll rebuild it into something stronger, something worthy of the faith people place in it every single day. Randy Cox is still waiting for that answer. We all are.